Commander Jake Morrison stepped off the transport ship and onto the cold, metal floor of Nexus Prime. His space station was huge, bigger than any city he had ever seen on Earth. Its walls curved up and away into darkness, and strange lights blinked. Everywhere like stars. Jake had been traveling for 3 weeks to get here. 3 weeks alone in a small ship, eating food from tubes and drinking recycled water. 3 weeks to think about what he would say to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The air smelled different here. It was clean, but somehow wrong. It did not smell like Earth air. It did not smell like home. Jake missed the smell of rain and grass and coffee. He missed Linda, his wife, who had cried when he left. He missed his daughter Amy, who was only 8 years old and did not understand why Daddy had to go so far away. A robot rolled up to him. It was silver and round, with 3 blue lights for eyes. "Commander Morrison," it said in a voice that sounded like it came from a computer. "Please follow me to the tribunal chamber." Jake followed the robot down a long hallway. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to move and shift in the light. Other beings walked past him, and none of them looked human. Some were tall and thin, like walking trees. Others floated in the air like living clouds. One looked like a giant insect with too many legs. They all stared at him as he passed. Some made sounds that might have been talking. Others just watched with eyes that were not like human eyes at all. Jake could feel their thoughts, even though he could not read minds. They were all thinking the same thing. What is this small, weak creature doing here? The robot led him to a massive door that was at least 50 feet tall. It opened without making any sound. Inside was the biggest room Jake had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that he could not see the top. Thousands of seats filled the space, and in every seat sat a different kind of alien being. At the front of the room was a raised platform with several chairs. In the center chair sat something that looked like it was made of living crystal. It was 12 feet tall and had no face that Jake could see, but somehow he knew it was looking at him. "Commander Morrison," the crystal being said. Its voice echoed through the chamber like music played on glass. "I am Chief Arbiter Vex Thara. You stand before the Galactic Tribunal to request membership for your species in the Galactic Federation." Jake walked to a small podium in the center of the room. It was the only thing built for someone his size. Everything else was made for beings much larger or smaller or stranger than humans. The podium had a microphone that would translate his words into languages he had never heard of. He looked around the chamber. There were so many different types of beings that his eyes could not take them all in. Some had fur, some had scales. Some seemed to be made of light itself. They filled the air with whispers and clicks and sounds that had no names in any human language. Near the front, he saw a group of beings that looked like they were made of gas or smoke. They moved like clouds, changing shape as they floated above their seats. To his left were creatures that reminded him of ants, but they were the size of humans and wore clothing that sparkled like jewels. Behind them sat beings that looked like they were carved from stone, but their eyes glowed with inner fire. In the far corner, something that looked like a tree, made of metal, swayed back and forth as if moved by wind, that did not exist. Jake had studied files about many of these species during his long trip here. The gas beings were called Etherians. They lived in the clouds of gas giant planets and thought in ways that humans could barely understand. The ant-like creatures were the Zentari. They shared one mind between all members of their species. The stone beings were the Carnate, warriors who had conquered 100 worlds before joining the Federation. Each species had technology that was thousands of years ahead of anything humans had built. They traveled between stars as easily as humans drove cars. They had cured diseases that still killed people on Earth. They had learned to live in peace with each other after millions of years of Evolution dot, and now they were all here to judge whether humanity deserved to join them. Chief Arbiter Vexthara struck something that sounded like a bell made of crystal. The sound rang through the chamber, and all the whispers stopped. The silence was complete and heavy. "We are gathered here," Vexthara said, "to hear the petition of the species that calls itself human. They come from a small world in the outer spiral of our galaxy. They have achieved faster than light travel only 3 years ago. They request full membership in the Galactic Federation." A wave of sound rolled through the chamber. It was not quite laughter, but it was close. Jake could hear the disbelief in their voices, even though he could not understand their languages. To them, 3 years was nothing. Most species took hundreds of years to prove they were ready for galactic society. The human representative will have the opportunity to speak in defense of his species, Vexthara continued. But first, we will hear from those who oppose this petition. Jake's heart sank. He had hoped to speak first, to make his case before the aliens could build their arguments against humanity. But now he would have to listen as they listed every human failure, every war, every mistake his species had ever made. He thought about Earth, so far away. He thought about all the people depending on him to bring them into the galactic community. He thought about the advanced medicine that could save millions of lives, the technology that could end hunger and poverty, the knowledge that could help humans finally understand their place in the universe. He also thought about the other reason he was here, the one he had not told anyone about, the thing that Earth's long-range sensors had detected in the dark space between galaxies. The thing that was moving toward their galaxy, still years away, but getting closer. The thing that would eventually threaten every living world in the Milky Way. Jake gripped the edges of the podium and waited. He had come here to save his species, but he was beginning to realize that he might need to save everyone else too. Tribunal was about to begin, and Jake Morrison was the only human in a room full of aliens who thought his species was not worth their time. He was about to prove them wrong. Chief Arbiter Vexthara turned toward a section of the chamber where the gas-like beings floated. The tribunal recognizes Ambassador Zeefkal of the Etherian Collective. One of the cloud beings drifted forward. As it moved, it changed from gray to a deep blue color. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind blowing through caves. "Honored members of the tribunal," Zeefkal said, "I speak against the humans' petition. They are not ready to join civilized society." The ambassador waved one of his misty arms, and the air above the chamber filled with moving pictures. Jake watched in silence as images of Earth appeared for everyone to see. But these were not the good parts of Earth. These were the wars, the pollution, the suffering. "Behold their world," Zeefkal said. "They have fought wars for their entire history. Even now, as they reach for the stars, they point weapons at each other. They have divided their single planet into nearly 200 different nations. They cannot agree on anything." The images showed soldiers shooting at each other. They showed cities burning and people running in fear. They showed the great wars that had killed millions of humans. Jake wanted to look away, but he forced himself to watch. These were his people, and he had to face the truth about them. "Look at how they treat their own world," the ambassador continued. The images changed to show factories pumping smoke into the air. They showed plastic floating in the oceans. They showed forests being cut down and animals dying. They poison their own air and water. They destroy the very planet that gave them life. Jake felt sick. Everything the alien was saying was true. Humans did fight wars. They did pollute their world. They did terrible things to each other and to the planet that was their home. "Most troubling of all," Zeefkal said, "is their inability to work together. We Etherians think as one across our entire species. The Zentari share a single mind. Even the individualistic Carnate understand the value of unity. But humans? They cannot even feed all their own people, while some live in great wealth. The images now showed human poverty, children with hungry faces, people sleeping in the streets while others lived in mansions. It was the shame of humanity, displayed for all the galaxy to see. These beings want to join our peaceful federation, Zefkal said, but they bring only chaos and violence. They would be a danger to all of us. The ambassador's gaseous form turned dark red. I recommend that their petition be denied. The Etherian floated back to his section. Around the chamber, many aliens nodded in agreement. Some made sounds that Jake thought were probably applause in their languages. Vexthara struck her crystal bell again. The tribunal recognizes Hive Speaker Quintala of the Centauri. One of the ant-like beings stood up. She was covered in shimmering scales that changed color as she moved. When she spoke, it sounded like 1,000 voices talking at once. We have studied the humans for many years, Quintala said. We find them disturbing. They think only as individuals. They cannot share thoughts or feelings the way proper beings should. Each human is alone in his own mind. Jake had read about the Centauri in his briefing files. They were a hive mind species. Every member of their race was connected to all the others. They literally thought as one being with billions of bodies. To them, human individuality was as strange as their hive mind was to humans. Watch how they behave, the hive speaker continued. New images appeared above the chamber. These showed humans arguing with each other, politicians debating, scientists disagreeing about theories, families fighting over dinner. They cannot agree on simple facts, Quintala said. We Centauri know that water is wet because all of us know it at the same time. But humans will argue about whether water is wet. They will argue about anything. They cannot make decisions as a group because they cannot think as a group. The images changed. Show human governments. Jake watched as politicians argued in the United Nations. He saw protesters in the streets. He saw people holding signs with different messages, all shouting at each other. How can such beings help govern a galaxy? Quintala asked. They cannot even govern themselves. Their leaders change every few years. Their laws change constantly. Their societies are always in chaos because they cannot agree on how to live. The hive speaker's scales turned a deep purple color. We Centauri have lived in perfect harmony for 1 million years. We have never had a war among ourselves because we are all one mind. We have never had crime because we would only be hurting ourselves. We have never had loneliness because we are always together. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The Centauri way of life sounded peaceful, but it also sounded like a prison. What was the point of living if you could never have your own thoughts? What was the point of being alive if you are just part of a bigger machine? The humans celebrate their individuality, Quintala continued. They call it freedom, but we call it madness. A species that cannot think together cannot work together. They will bring chaos to our ordered galaxy. The hive speaker sat down. Her 1,000 voices hummed together in a sound that made Jake's teeth ache. Vexthara looked toward another section of the chamber. The tribunal recognizes War Chief Breakter of the Carnate Empire. A massive being made of living rock stood up. He was at least 15 feet tall, with glowing red eyes and arms like tree trunks. When he spoke, his voice sounded like boulders rolling down a mountain. I will be brief, Breakter said. The humans are weak. He raised one huge arm, and new images appeared. These showed human soldiers in battle. But compared to the aliens watching, the humans looked small and fragile. Their weapons looked like toys. Their armor looked like paper. We have watched their wars, the war chief continued. They fight with projectile weapons that fire metal bullets. They protect themselves with thin armor that cannot stop a child's energy weapon. They move in vehicles that crawl along the ground like insects. The images showed human tanks and jets. To Jake, they had always seemed powerful and advanced. But he could see how primitive they must look to beings who could travel between stars. Their warships are laughable, Breakter said. The images changed to show Earth's space fleet. Jake winced as he saw their ships displayed next to alien vessels. The human ships looked like toys next to the massive alien warships. They took 3 years to build these ships, the war chief said. We could destroy their entire fleet with a single cruiser. Their strongest weapons could not scratch our armor. Their fastest ships are slower than our cargo vessels. Breakters. Red eyes seemed to look directly at Jake. Most pathetic of all, they die so easily. Their average lifespan is less than 100 years. They are made of soft flesh that tears and breaks. They need air to breathe, water to drink, and food to eat. They are prisoners of their own weakness. The war chief gestured toward the chamber. Look around you, human. See the Etherians who live as pure energy. See the Zentari who can regrow. Any injured part. See my own people who are carved from living stone. We are strong. You are weak. Why should the strong protect the weak? Jake felt the weight of every eye in the chamber pressing down on him. Everything the aliens had said was true. Humans were violent. They were divided. They were weak compared to the advanced species around him. But as he listened to their words, something began to grow inside him. It was not anger, exactly, though he felt that too. It was something deeper. It was the feeling a human gets when someone tells them they cannot do something. It was the feeling that had driven humans to climb the highest mountains, to explore the deepest oceans, to reach for the stars, even when everyone said it was impossible. Jake. Morrison stood at his small podium, surrounded by thousands of beings who thought his species was worthless. But he was not afraid anymore. He was ready to show them what humans were really made of. The prosecution had finished. Now it was his turn to speak. Chief Arbiter Vex Thara turned her crystal form toward Jake. The tribunal recognizes Commander Jake Morrison of the human species. You may speak in defense of your petition. Jake stood up slowly. The chamber was completely silent. Thousands of alien beings watched him with eyes, sensors, and organs he had no names for. He could feel their attention, like a physical weight pressing down on him. He walked to the center of the speaking area, his boots making small clicking sounds on the metal floor. The sound echoed in the vast space, making him feel even smaller than he already did. Honored members of the tribunal, Jake began, his voice carrying through the translation system. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. He paused and looked around the chamber. Many of the aliens seemed surprised by his calm tone. They had expected him to be angry or desperate after listening to the accusations against his species. I have listened carefully to what has been said about humanity, Jake continued. Ambassador Zeph Call spoke about our wars and our pollution. Hive Speaker Quantala spoke about our inability to think as one. War Chief Breakter spoke about our weakness. Jake took a deep breath. I want to tell you something that might surprise you. Everything they said about us is true. A wave of murmurs swept through the chamber. The aliens had not expected this. They had expected him to deny their accusations or make excuses for human behavior. We are a violent species, Jake said simply. We have fought wars for thousands of years. We have killed millions of our own people. We have hurt each other in ways that probably seem insane to many of you. He looked directly at the Etherian section. We have polluted our world. We have filled our air with smoke and our oceans with poison. We have cut down forests and driven animals to extinction. We have treated our planet badly. Then he turned toward the Zentari. We cannot think as one mind. Every human is alone in their own thoughts. We argue about everything. We disagree about simple facts. We fight over ideas that seem obvious to others. Finally, he looked at the carnate section. And yes, we are weak. We die easily. We are made of soft flesh that breaks. We need air and water and food to survive. Compared to many of you, we are fragile children. The chamber was completely silent now. Jake could hear the hum of the stations, air recyclers, and the distant sound of energy flowing through the walls. So why, Jake asked, should you let such a flawed species join your federation? He walked closer to the alien sections, his eyes moving from one group to another. Let me tell you about my species, he said. Not the things we have done wrong, but the things we have done that no one else has ever done. Jake touched a control. On his podium, and images began to appear above the chamber. But these were not the violent scenes the aliens had shown. These were different images of humanity. You say we are violent, Jake said, but look at this. The images showed human soldiers, but not in battle. They showed soldiers sharing their food with hungry children. They showed medics treating wounded enemies. They showed armies stopping their wars to help victims of natural disasters. We fight each other, yes, Jake continued, but we also sacrifice ourselves for strangers. We run into burning buildings to save people we have never met. We dive into dangerous waters to rescue drowning swimmers. We give our lives to protect others. The images changed to show firefighters and rescue workers and ordinary people doing extraordinary things. You say we pollute our world, Jake said, looking at the Etherians. But we are also the only species that feels guilty about it. We are the only beings who look at our mistakes and try to fix them. New images appeared. They showed humans cleaning up oil spills, planting trees, and building machines to clean the air. They showed scientists working to find better ways to make energy without hurting the planet. We know we have damaged our world, Jake said, and we are working to heal it. We are changing our ways. We are learning to do better. Jake turned toward the Zentari section. You say we cannot think as one. You say our individuality is madness. But let me show you what human individuality can create. The images changed to show human art and music. They showed paintings that had never existed before humans made them. They showed sculptures that were born from individual human imagination. They showed music that came from the hearts of individual composers. Every human mind is different, Jake said. Every human sees the world in a unique way. This means we create things that no one else has ever thought of. We solve problems in ways that ordered minds might never discover. He gestured toward the chamber. Look around you. I see incredible technology. I see beings who have mastered space travel and energy manipulation. But I also see that most of your species think in similar ways. You have found efficient solutions to problems. But have you found beautiful solutions? The images changed to show human discoveries. They showed scientists making breakthroughs by thinking in ways that seemed crazy to others. They showed inventors creating new technologies by combining ideas that had never been combined before. Human chaos is not just destructive, Jake said. It is also creative. We find answers by looking in places where no one else would think to look. Jake moved toward the carnate section. War Chief Breakter watched him with glowing red eyes. You say we are weak, Jake said. And you are right. We are soft and fragile. We die easily. We need many things to survive. The images changed to show humans in harsh environments. They showed explorers in frozen wastelands, climbers on high mountains, and divers in deep oceans. But our weakness has made us strong in ways you may not understand, Jake continued. Because we can die easily, we value life. Because we are fragile, we have learned to be careful. Because we need so many things to survive, we have learned to work together. He looked directly at Breakter. You are made of living stone. You are strong and hard to kill. But have you ever had to overcome fear? Have you ever had to be brave when you knew you might die? The images showed human courage. They showed people facing danger to help others. They showed soldiers advancing into battle despite their fear. They showed ordinary people doing extraordinary things because they chose to, not because they had to. We are afraid, Jake said. We are afraid of death, of pain, of failure, but we act anyway. We do what needs to be done despite our fear. This is what we call courage, and it only exists because we are weak. Jake walked back to the center of the speaking area. The chamber was still silent, but it was a different kind of silence now. The aliens were listening, really listening. For the first time. I know what you are thinking, Jake said. You are thinking that these are nice words, but they do not change the facts. We are still violent, divided, and weak. We still seem like we would be a burden to your peaceful federation. He paused and looked around the chamber one more time. But I have not told you our greatest strength yet, Jake said. I have not told you about the thing that makes humans truly special. The aliens leaned forward in their seats. Even the gaseous Etherians seemed to condense slightly, as if they were paying closer attention. I have not told you what happens when we face extinction, Jake said quietly. I have not told you what humans become when everything we love is threatened. His voice grew stronger. And I have not told you why you need us more than you know. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the vast chamber, surrounded by beings who had traveled across the galaxy to judge his species. But now, for the first time, they were beginning to wonder if they had misunderstood what they were judging. The real defense of humanity was about to begin. Jake touched his podium controls again, and the images above the chamber changed. Now they showed something that many of the aliens sit up straighter in their seats. Let me tell you about human war, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly. Through the vast space. Not the wars we fight against each other, but the wars we fight against impossible odds. The images showed ancient human battles. They showed a small group of Greek soldiers holding a narrow pass against a massive army. They showed a tiny island nation fighting off invasion by a much larger force. They showed outnumbered defenders, holding cities that everyone said could not be defended. Ambassador Zefkal, you spoke of our violence as if it were only destructive, Jake said, looking toward the Etherian section. But human violence is also creative. Every time we fight, we learn. Every battle teaches us something new. Jake looked directly at War Chief Breakter. You showed images of our primitive weapons. You laughed at our metal bullets and our simple armor. But let me tell you how we got those weapons. The images changed to show the development of human technology. They showed cavemen with stone tools, then metal workers making swords, then the first guns, then modern weapons. We started with rocks, Jake said. We learned to chip them into sharp edges. Then we learned to make metal. Then we learned to make things that explode. Then we learned to make things that fire projectiles faster than sound. He gestured toward the alien sections. Most of you developed your technology during peaceful times. You had thousands of years to slowly improve your tools. But humans? We improved our tools because our enemies were trying to kill us. The images showed human innovation driven by necessity. They showed people inventing new weapons, new defenses, new tactics, all because they had to, or they would die. Every human. War has been a laboratory, Jake continued. Every battle has taught us something about strategy, about logistics, about technology. We have learned to think like our enemies, to predict their moves, to turn their strengths against them. Jake looked around the chamber. How many of you have ever fought a war where you might lose? How many of you have ever had to invent new ways to fight because the old ways were not working? The chamber was silent. Many of the alien species had not fought wars in thousands of years. They had achieved peace through advanced technology and careful diplomacy. "Let me show you something else," Jake said. The images changed to show human military tactics. They showed small groups of humans defeating much larger forces through clever planning and unexpected strategies. "This is the Battle of Thermopylae," Jake said, pointing to one image. 300 human soldiers held off an army of hundreds of thousands. They knew they would die, but they fought anyway to buy time for their people. The images changed. This is the Battle of Britain. A small island nation fought off invasion by a much larger empire. They were outnumbered in every way, but they refused to surrender. More images appeared. This is the Siege of Stalingrad. A human city was surrounded by enemies, but the defenders fought house by house, room by room, until the attackers gave up. Jake's voice grew stronger. "This is what humans do when we face extinction. We do not just fight. We fight smart. We fight with everything we have. We fight until we win, or until we are all dead." He looked directly at War Chief Brechter again. "You said we are weak because we die easily. But let me ask you something. If you knew you were going to die, would you still fight? If you knew your cause was hopeless, would you still try?" The massive stone warrior did not answer, but his red eyes seemed to glow a little brighter. "Humans fight hopeless battles all the time," Jake said. "We fight because we believe in something bigger than ourselves. We fight for our families, for our friends, for people we have never met. We fight for ideas and dreams and hopes." Jake touched his controls again, and the images changed to show human space exploration. They showed the first rockets that exploded on the launch pad. They showed astronauts who died trying to reach the stars. They showed the long, difficult journey from Earth to the rest of the galaxy. "You said we only achieved faster than light travel 3 years ago," Jake said. "You said this proves we are too primitive to join your federation. But let me tell you what we did in those 3 years. The images showed human engineers working day and night. They showed scientists sharing information across the globe. They showed ordinary people giving up their comfortable lives to work on the space program. We did not just build spaceships," Jake said. "We built them while studying your technology. We built them while learning about galactic society. We built them while preparing for this moment." Jake looked around the chamber. "How long did it take your species to develop space travel? Hundreds of years? Thousands? We did it in 3 years because we had to. Because we knew that if we did not, we would be left behind." The images changed to show human ships in space. But these were not the primitive vessels that War Chief Brechter had mocked. These were sleek, advanced ships that incorporated both human and alien technology. "The ships you saw earlier were our first attempts," Jake said. "We wanted you to see them. We wanted you to think we were weak and primitive. But these are our real ships." The aliens began to murmur among themselves. Some sounded surprised. Others sounded concerned. "You see," Jake continued, "we learned something important about galactic society in the last 3 years. We learned that most of you have been at peace for so long that you have forgotten how to fight. You have forgotten how to adapt quickly. You have forgotten how to survive against impossible odds." Jake's voice grew serious. "And that is why you need us." The chamber fell silent again. Even the background hum of the station's systems seemed to quiet down. "I know what you are thinking," Jake said. "You are thinking that we are still just one small species from one small planet. You are thinking that even if we are better fighters than you expected, we are still too few to matter." He touched his controls one more time, and the images above. The chamber changed to show something that made many of the aliens gasp, The images showed deep space, far beyond any star system. And in that deep space, something was moving. Something huge and dark and wrong. "This is why we really came here," Jake said quietly. "Not just to join your federation, but to warn you. Our deep space sensors detected this 3 months ago. It is still years away, but it is coming." The images showed more details of the approaching threat. It was not a natural phenomenon. It was artificial, constructed, and it was bigger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. "We do not know what it is," Jake said. "We do not know who built it or why it is coming here. But we know that when it arrives, it will threaten every living world in this galaxy." The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens were talking to each other in dozens of languages. Some were pointing at the images. Others were consulting devices that Jake could not identify. Chief Arbiter Vexthara struck her crystal bell, and the noise gradually died down. "You have found something in the void between galaxies," she said. "Why have you not shared this information before now?" Jake looked directly at her. "Because we knew you would not believe us. We knew you would think we were making it up to get into your federation. We knew you would dismiss us as primitive creatures who did not understand what they were seeing." He gestured toward the images. "But now you have seen what we can do. You have seen how we think, how we fight, how we adapt. Now maybe you will listen when we tell you that something is coming that will require all of those skills." Jake walked closer to the alien sections. "You have built a peaceful galaxy. You have created amazing technologies. You have learned. Live together in harmony. These are wonderful achievements." His voice grew harder. "But you have also grown soft. You have forgotten how to fight for your lives. You have forgotten how to adapt quickly to new threats. You have forgotten how to do impossible things because you have to." He looked around the chamber one more time. "The thing that is coming toward us will not care about your peaceful federation. It will not be impressed by your advanced technology. It will not stop because you ask it to." Jake's voice filled the chamber. "But humans know how to fight the impossible. We know how to win when we should lose. We know how to find hope when there is no hope left." He stood in the center of the vast space, a small figure surrounded by thousands of alien beings. But now they were not looking at him with dismissal or amusement. They were looking at him with something that might have been respect at, and for the first time since he had arrived at Nexus Prime, Jake Morrison felt like he might actually succeed in saving not just his own species, but all of them. The chamber was in chaos. Aliens were talking to each other in excited voices, pointing at the images Jake had shown them and consulting their devices. Some were standing up in their seats. Others were moving between sections to talk to different species. Chief Arbiter Vexthara struck her crystal bell several times before the noise began to die down. "Commander Morrison," she said, her voice carrying the weight of authority, "you have made serious claims about a threat from beyond our galaxy. How do we know this is not deception to gain admission to our federation?" Jake had expected this question. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. It was about the size of a human hand and made of materials that seemed to shift between metal and crystal. "This contains all the data our sensors have collected," Jake said. "Star charts, energy readings, trajectory calculations, everything. You can verify it with your own instruments." He held the device up so everyone could see it. "But more importantly, you can send your own ships to confirm what we have found. The coordinates are all here." Ambassador Zefkal drifted forward slightly. "Even if this threat is real," he said, "why should we trust a species we barely know to help us deal with it?" Jake looked directly at the gaseous alien. "Because we are the only ones who know how to fight when defeat seems certain. Because we are the only ones who get stronger when things get worse." He touched his podium controls, and the images above the chamber changed again. Now they showed human history, but not the wars and violence the aliens had seen before. These images showed something different. "Let me tell you about the last time humans faced extinction," Jake said. 75,000 years ago, a volcano called Toba erupted on our world. It threw so much ash into the air that it blocked out the sun for years. The temperature dropped. Plants died. Animals died. The images showed a world covered in ash and ice. They showed small groups of humans huddled around fires, struggling to survive. "Scientists believe that only a few thousand humans survived," Jake continued. "Our entire species was reduced to tiny groups scattered across a frozen world. Any reasonable beings would have given up. Any logical species would have accepted extinction." Jake's voice grew stronger, but humans did not give up. "We adapted. We learned to hunt new animals. We learned to eat new plants. We learned to make fire in new ways. We learned to work together like never before." The images changed to show human recovery. They showed the slow spread of humanity across the world as the climate improved. They showed the growth of human civilization from those tiny surviving groups. "From a few thousand desperate survivors, we became billions," Jake said. "We spread across our entire planet. We built cities and nations and cultures. We reached for the stars." He looked around the chamber. "This is what humans do when we face extinction. We do not just survive. We come back stronger." Hive speaker Quantala stood up, her scales shifting colors rapidly. "But you are individuals," she said in her 1,000 voices. "How can scattered individuals coordinate against a galactic threat?" Jake smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "Let me show you something amazing about human individuals," he said. The images changed to show human responses to disasters. They showed people dropping everything to help earthquake victims they had never met. They showed volunteers traveling across the world to fight diseases in foreign countries. They showed strangers risking their lives to save each other. "When humans face a common threat, we stop being individuals," Jake said. "We become something bigger. We become humanity." The images showed the response to global threats on Earth. They showed the entire world working together to fight climate change. They showed nations sharing resources during pandemics. They showed enemies becoming allies when faced with disasters. "You see us as chaotic and divided," Jake continued, "and we are most of the time. But when something threatens all of us, we become the most unified force in the galaxy. Every human becomes a soldier. Every human becomes a scientist. Every human becomes whatever is needed." War Chief Breakter stood up slowly, his massive stone form towering over his section. "You speak of unity," he rumbled. "But how do we know you will fight for us? How do we know you will not abandon us to save yourselves?" Jake looked directly at the towering warrior. "Because that is not what humans do," he said simply. "When we adopt someone as family, we die for them. When we accept someone as an ally, we bleed for them. When we call someone friend, we stand with them until the end." The images changed to show human soldiers fighting alongside allies in distant wars. They showed humans dying to protect people from other nations. They showed rescue workers from around the world helping disaster victims regardless of nationality or race. "We have a saying on Earth," Jake said. "No one gets left behind." It means that we do not abandon our people, no matter the cost. If you accept us as part of your federation, you become our people. Jake walked closer to the alien sections. "I know what you are thinking. You are thinking that we are asking you to take a huge risk. You are thinking that we might be more dangerous than the threat we warn you about." He stopped in the center of the speaking area. "You are right to be cautious. We are dangerous. We are violent and unpredictable and difficult to control. We will question your decisions. We will suggest changes to your systems. We will make you uncomfortable. Jake's voice filled the chamber. But we will also stand between you and anything that tries to destroy you. We will fight when you cannot fight. We will hope when you cannot hope. We will find a way to win when winning seems impossible. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the background sounds of the station seemed muted. The choice is yours, Jake said quietly. You can reject our petition. You can send us back to our small world and deal with the approaching threat yourselves. You can trust in your advanced technology and peaceful ways. He gestured toward the images still floating above the chamber. Or you can accept that sometimes the galaxy needs warriors who know how to fight impossible battles. Sometimes the universe needs people who are too stubborn to accept defeat. Jake looked around the chamber one more time. We did not come here just to join your federation. We came here to save it. The question is whether you will let us. Chief. Arbiter Vexthara conferred quietly with the other judges on the platform. The alien representatives talked among themselves in dozens of languages. The chamber filled with the sound of intense discussion. Finally, Vexthara struck her crystal. Bell, the chamber fell silent. Commander Morrison, she said, the tribunal will recess to consider your petition and the information you have provided. We will also dispatch verification ships to confirm your claims about the approaching threat. She paused, and Jake could see light moving through her crystal form, like thoughts made visible. However, she continued, I can tell you that your words have been illuminating. Many of us came here expecting to hear the desperate pleas of a primitive species. Instead, we have heard something quite different. Jake waited, his heart pounding. We have heard the voice of a species that has faced extinction and survived. We have heard the voice of warriors who know how to fight impossible battles. We have heard the voice of beings who might be exactly what the galaxy needs. Vexthara's form seemed to glow brighter. The tribunal will announce its decision tomorrow. But I will say this, for the first time since this session began, we are not laughing at humanity. We are listening to it. The session was adjourned, and the aliens began to leave the chamber. But many of them looked back at Jake as they went. Some nodded to him. Others made gestures that he thought might be signs of respect in their cultures. Jake Morrison stood alone in the vast chamber, watching the alien representatives file out. He thought about Earth, so far away. He thought about his wife Linda and his daughter, Amy. He thought about all the people depending on him to bring them into the galactic community. But mostly, he thought about the dark thing moving through the void between galaxies. The thing that would eventually reach their galaxy and threaten every living world. Tomorrow, the tribunal would announce their decision. Tomorrow, Jake would learn whether humanity would join the galactic community as partners or face the coming darkness alone. But tonight, for the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime, Jake Morrison allowed himself to hope. Because for the first time, the galaxy was listening to what humans had to say. And when humans had something important to say, they usually found a way to make people listen. The Galactic Tribunal had scoffed when the human began to speak. But they were not scoffing anymore.